afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another exciting Propagandacast with me, your host, ImperialDane, Master of Propaganda, here of the Reich, Defender of the Fatherland, here to deliver to you here's another glorious Propagandacast. We shall be watching Piwawsky fighting for the Americans for the 4th Infantry Division in a fight against that fiend ImperialDane, fighting for the 17th SS Panzergrenadier Division Götz von Berlichingen. Glad to hear that, Piwawsky. Glad to hear that you're a fan. And he was just asking me why I wasn't streaming lately. Or, well, if I was streaming, I'm not, because I'm a bit rusty. Haven't played a bit in the holidays, and so I need to get a bit back into the fight before I sort of feel confident casting. But rather note here, we are seeing a 3 engineer start. In fact, looks like a 4 engineer start art from Piwawsky. Very aggressive sort of play, a bit rarer nowadays. There was a sort of period where 4 engineers was the rage. Now it's sort of something you occasionally see, but it's not the primary strategy anymore, so we've sort of gone back to the standard, the sort of, 2 pioneers or engineers and some riflemen out, but rather standard for me. Of course, I'm currently not aware of what Piwawsky is actually doing. Barracks up there with the 4th Riflemen's or Engineers Squad at the edge of the base. Good placement there. Wehrmacht quarters right here on the right hand side of my base, thus indicating, of course, that I want to focus on the right hand side of this map. Schwimmwagen following up as the 2nd unit, sure. Barracks almost done. Munition secure there, and of course securing a lot of munitions initially, so of course can equip some flamethrowers on his engineers as bloody quickly as possible. There we go, and already of course he can get some riflemen out. So he can of course gain a certain early map advantage. He's in territory, and then of course reasonably fast get some riflemen in, and of course usually as the Wehrmacht you're not sort of really equipped for this, of course, and well, never mind, you're not going to find out right away. So in that sense the American can get a nice foothold before he begins counter-attacking the riflemen. There we go, the 1st engineer drops, shot in the flippin' head, and we are seeing a Schwimmwagen following up. The almighty Schwimmwagen, amphibious Volkswagen, with the MG42 mount, doing a bit of reconnaissance, doing a bit of patrolling. And of course at this stage, when I've sort of noticed, there's an awful lot of red territory, he's probably going for a 4 engineer start or a 3 engineer start in this case, of course. So also know I have to be a bit aggressive. We do see the 1st Rifleman squad moving up there. Schwimmwagen's over up. Volkswagen's also get a few shots behind the heavy cover there. Schwimmwagen moves up, tries to perhaps draw a bit of fire. Rifleman take a few shots. Schwimmwagen takes most of the damage. 1 rifleman goes down in this brutal fight. 2nd squad of Volksgrenadier following up, and some engineers moving up as well. Could be flamethrowers. Rifleman continuing to take a bit of damage. Bit of work over there and there. Piwawsky so far holding most of the map. Fighting here between the Volksgunners and the Riflemen. Volksgunners, Riflemen, and Schwimmwagen combo so far having the advantage against the Riflemen, although looks like Heinz drops. Shot in the stomach, leaning up against the sandbags, begging for a medic, and another Volkswagen pretty quickly drops. Suddenly the things are going in the advantage of the Riflemen. 1 more down, Volkswagen's moving up in the flank, and flamethrower engineers are up. Pioneers pushed away from the west side. And I'd rather quickly actually pull back, and then I also order all of my troops to actually focus down on the engineers, since they're going to be more considerably easier targets and more vulnerable. And there we go. 2 Volksgunners, they'll burst into flames, and there we go. In fact, a full retreat from Piwawsky right there. What I'm not quite aware of course, is the 2nd Rifleman squad moving up there, and I'm actually moving on to handle this. And in this sense, my Volksgunners run into a bit of problem as they get surrounded by Riflemen, and I realise, well, let's see if I can't get them into the building, perhaps do some work there, but all in all, this quickly turns into disaster for me, because I wasn't quite paying attention right there. Schwimmwagen goes up in flames, tragically so, without really doing a lot of damage to the engineers right there. MG42 moving in quickly. We'll have to put that in to somehow limit the amount of work that Piwawsky can do against me. And I rather accidentally send out these Volksgunners without having them properly reinforced. From here, they're getting a good serving of that German lead. In the meanwhile, engineers continue up the right-hand side, though they are a bit wounded. More riflemen, I wager, on the way for Piwawsky and the 4th Infantry. Flamethrower pioneers now on the way as well, to sort of help keep things a bit more secure, and a bit more firepower, in this case literally, to my repertoire. 3rd squad of Volksgunners out. I rather prefer the 3 Volksgunners, MG and Schwimmwagen sort of move. Gives me a nice amount of firepower, allows me to be aggressive, which is rather how I prefer to play, but can also sort of be improvised into something more defensive, since infantry obviously work both ways. Plus, I will also then tend to get a medic bunker up, and that way also get something with grenadiers also, and that way it's a quite nice strategy, at least that works for me. Spotting some engineers there, dealing with those. And Piwawsky setting up for a real nice flank. It's not uncommon to see them push through here, because again, it's going to be a bit harder to keep an eye on. And usually the Wehrmacht will have everything set up there, but I've actually switched everything over there a bit. Engineers on the retreat. Looks like the Volkskrieger's got them. Shifting over towards here to cover that area. And of course we also see a push in there, so I'd rather leave this rather bundled up force for the MG42 flamethrowers and Volkskrieger's moving in to deal with the other riflemen over here. Burning away at the Yankees. In fact, 3 of them turn into torches. Leaving the Volkskrieger's a nice opening to begin seizing some territory. Of course, also minesweepers up, since I'm pretty confident that Piwawsky, being a solid American player, will of course also set about mining. And this, of course, being a rather great spot for mining, he obviously had. So after having sandwiched my shrimp wagon for what was worth in munitions, I set about cutting the wine, clearing the mines. And of course, Piwawsky saw me laying down mines, so he obviously knows I'm also a mine user. Obviously, he wants a minesweeper as well. Taking up there, although we also seeing a supplier going up for Piwawsky. Riflemen lining up, and note only 3 riflemen. I mean, that tends to be sort of the rule of thumb also for 4 engineer starts. You only get 3 rifleman squads, otherwise, I mean, you're going to be pouring too much resources into the initial tier and could in fact set yourself up for a bit of a nasty surprise. Mine laid down there. Just in case. Again, it's a nice spot for mining, so why not? Piwawsky pushing in with the larger force again. Clamping up a bit, unfortunately, in sort of one force, and again, works quite nice for my MG42 to stop it. Pushing up there as well. Troops getting slaughtered, shot at. Volkskrieger, in fact, move in, figuring this is pretty much a shooting gallery. Isn't it, Heinz? Yeah, Fritz. Rifling up here, running into trouble. This is definitely not one of Piwawsky's best assaults, running into a bit of problems. Well, these minesweeper engineers continuing up there. Motor pull up. I've only begun constructing a Kriegbarracks. In fact, I'm a bit of trouble there. I was a bit too happy in using my pioneers to sort of take territory instead of being that perhaps the Volkskrieger this case around. So a delayed Kriegbarracks is in fact going to hurt me a bit, mildly put, if I'm not careful. At the same time, pushing on here, being rather aggressive towards Piwawsky. Figuring I can hold this, keep him a bit under pressure, and thus draw his attention away from elsewhere, because again, there's enemies quite close to his base. So that is rather what I figure in this case. I leave the MG42 here, although, I mean, I could have actually pulled it up here, done a bit more, I think. Volkskrieger reinforcing. Greyhound out, the M8. And there we go, riflemen engineers pushing up. Lots of M1 Garans and the M1 Carbine. And there we go, Blitzkrieg assault, lots of the grenades, and of course, I mean, the Star Granate was a concussive grenade, so I suppose that relied more on shock force, and I suppose in that sense a bit stunning as well, whereas the American grenade was a Volkskrieger squad lost. Tragic, I was a bit too long here in retreating, but still I did some damage, but he obviously did more, so it is debatable if they actually did anything. Mining down here so he can't rush in with an armoured car, just in case. Although I'm a bit too late. Pack is on the way, and a grenadier squad to replace the one lost. As a rule of thumb, I'd always say, you know, have a minimum of 3 infantry squads. As the Wehrmacht, you can go down to a bare minimum of 2, but for the Americans, the minimum is 3. But a good minimum, and I will say for the Wehrmacht, is 3 squads, and more is better. Obviously, you shouldn't get all infantry. Pack is up, but of course, Piwawsky's already moving about. He's not content to just sit in one place. He's going to use the armored car for harassment. There we go. Jumping on the MG42, 50 caliber, raking in with firepower as well. And the 50 caliber, as a fun fact, was actually originally intended for an anti-tank weapon. So consider that. Grenadiers reinforced, or formed out for the 17th SS. One of the, well, many SS Panzer Grenadier divisions, which usually only had assault guns, except for the 11th, which had the rather interesting honor of actually also having a full battalion of Panthers with it. But generally most of these 17th SS Panzer Grenadier divisions were formed not so much of Germans, and were generally not awfully well equipped. I mean, yes, they were SS, and thus they still had more infantry and more artillery, but they did not, for example, have access to a lot of tanks. And most of them might have had a few command tanks, but that is it. Engineers here coming in under fire. Greyhound patrolling. Minesweepers avoiding it. A nice German counterattack in the name of the fatherland. And of course, note here, he laid down a Greyhound mine. I noticed it. And actually used a grenade to basically set it off. That is one of the ways you can set off a grenade if you know that they're lob on grenade, because you know, you figure, well, can't get a minesweeper up in time. And I don't want to risk forgetting about it and setting it off. So in that sense, grenades work nicely in that department. Let's go and look at Piwawsky, in fact, and the 4th Infantry. Greyhound a bit battered. It's only done alright. Securing points. Could do the Kampfkraft Center. We are seeing Browning automatics going up for Piwawsky soon. He's adding in to the force he has. Volkswagen's Grenadiers pulling back. MG42 moving up a bit. Also note the wire here, so we can't just run through it at that angle. And there we go, lining up for an assault. Flamethrower Engineers adding in, of course, good usage of that. Blitzkrieg Assault, sort of again, since he is sort of, you know, combining his force in slightly bundled fashion. I mean, assault grenades does work nicely. And there we go, one part of it already stopped. And a grenade against these right here, awfully climbed up as well, and 4 down in fact. Nice set of kills there for the Grenadier. Scoring a kill for the fatherland. And going up here as well. Some engineers thinking about, then 5 of them pulling up. Volkswagen is pulling back. And we do see a Granatenwerfer up. And the Yankees intent on killing some Krauts. At the same time, the Greyhound shreds a few Krauts with its 50 caliber. And the 37mm blasts a few as well. Volkswagen's here not doing too well. I'm basically hoping, and there we go, the mortar round, it does a bit of work. Volkswagen's retreating, but... And he pulls a Helmut Klump, the German version of Forrest Gump. Would that be more Waldenkamp? I don't know. Anyways. Pack up. Or moving slightly more forwards. Again, I'm rather liking this spot. It's nice and open. There's not so many points you sort of can really sneak up on. So in that sense, it's a nice sort of spot to sort of run a defense on, although of course they're still here, but you can still sort of nicely handle in some ways, and there's not going to be so easy for a Greyhound to sort of hit up there, so go figure. Engineers moving up. The 17th SS was itself composed of Romanian and I believe a bit Hungarian Volksdeutsche, and several of those 17th, 16th and 18th were in fact composed of that largely. The 16th, the Reichsführer SS, fought largely in Italy, while the 18th fought in Hungary, Romania, if I'm not mistaken. Rifle engineers moving up there. Artillery going in against the Volkswagens right there. And the... Oh, yeah, and the mortar as well. One Volkswagen hit. They're going to need a retreat, or at least... Oh, Christ. Mortar crew went down. Though most of the Volkswagens survived. Veterans up one, by the way. In this case, I'm a bit faster in actually getting a bit of veterans up. And the unit actually lost for Piwawsky. And Engineers squad is in fact down to 2 now. Sadly, Piwawsky did not have a medic station. That could have helped him again. I do think Americans would do a bit better if they remember the medic stations.
We are losing a
mortar, though, is still intact, although not the most functional. Volkswagen is moving up there to deal with the Engineers. Veterans 1, of course, providing a bit of healing for the Volksgrenadiers. Engineers getting blasted. And forced to retreat. Of course, Piwawsky is being a bit held at bay. Some engineers sneaking up then left-hand side. And a Sturmhaubitze 42 pulled in from some assault gun brigade. Number unknown. Salvaging the armored car for munitions. Taking points. Piwawsky, though, quick to pull up on the attack. MG42 pulled up to cover a bit here. Stu-42 moving up. Riflemen's oppressed. Riflemen going for the fuel there. And another push up here against the Grenadiers. And a howitzer going up for Piwawsky. The 105mm howitzer. The Americans, of course, had larger artillery, but those tended to be farther away from the action. engineers here, and I'm actually sort of trying to crush the engineers with the Stu-42 and actually pull it off. And Piwawsky seems to be a bit upset about that, obviously. Not entirely sure what went wrong from there, and he's probably also a bit curious about it as well. But accidents can happen, sadly. Volkswagen is running into the bell factory, losing Rudolf in the process. Stu-42 moving up. And the riflemen quickly pull retreat, rather than facing the Sturmhaubitze. Which, by the way, wasn't actually named based on the Pat Stug 4 chassis, as this one is. They were only made on the Stug 3 chassis. And there we go, the howitzer is ready to unleash 105mm shells towards his opponent. Of course, question is, does he need artillery, or will perhaps the left-hand side move towards perhaps some rangers, while he also goes for a tank depot? Might have helped him a bit more, but there you go. Direct hit on the Stu-42, nicely done. And a full retreat for me, because I'm not entirely sure where initially he's firing, and I don't want to risk losing a squad to his artillery. That would ruin my day a bit. More to recruit by a few plucky Volksgrenadiers. And the Grenadiers here coming a bit under attack from Riflemen. Ever glorious Riflemen. Just rendering the point neutral. Map control largely in the hands of the Wehrmacht at the moment. Stu-42 providing a bit of covering fire with its 105mm howitzer. Not quite doing anything there. A few Volksgrenadiers reinforcing, and of course there seems to be a common mistake among some people that the Volksgrenadiers were actually Volkssturm. They're not. They were quite two different organizations. One were largely composed of old men, and basically anyone who could not be spared from work, until of course the enemy was right outside the gate. They were not really well trained, and in some cases they didn't even have any rifles. And most of them might have had some Panzerfaust and a curious collection of weapons. Some did alright, but again, a lot of those were basically sent home. The Volksgrenadiers were actually army units. They did have reasonably alright recruits. They were just from Kriegsmarine, Luftwaffe, and otherwise still some army. And they were actually sort of, if they got the equipment, they were actually in some ways pretty well equipped. They had assault rifles, a large amount of them. They had Hetzers or Stugs, their own bit of assault gun armor there. They had more artillery in some ways, and generally, I mean, they were well equipped in some ways, but they didn't really have a lot of training in some cases either. So again, there is a difference right there. Stu fires off, and nice hit. 5 riflemen go in the blink of an eye, and the rifleman squad gets cut down. A nasty loss right there for Piwawsky. Artillery flies in though. Mortar rounds also flying in. Another hit on the Stu-42, but Veterans 1 helps a bit there. Folks goes with MP40s moving through the woods, or the trees. Moving up close to the rifleman, we are seeing an assault going in there. Lots of steel granate, and there we go. Riflemen are on the run. None stunned, although a few go down. And of course, someone wondering why was that effective? Probably because the riflemen are clumped up. Because here's the thing about weapons like the Stu-42, which rely on splash damage. I mean, depending, of course, on how close to the center of the splash you are, of course, the more likely it is to hit, and the more likely, of course, is to do damage. Of course, right here, the riflemen are considerably close, although again, not fully is of course such, but still, it also depends. It also sort of means that again, depending on how close troops are to each other, the more likely the Stu-42 to do horrible damage. More artillery that goes off right here to protect the fuel point, ensure it does not fall into the hands of Hans, the evil crowds. Anti-tank guns now out for Piwawsky. Stu-42 though a bit damaged. 14 kills though is nothing to laugh at, and my Stu never hits like that. It is pretty irregular that the Stu gets really that great kills with that regularity. I will definitely not deny that. Mortar up here in this sort of position, figuring it would do alright there. Grenadiers here taking a bit of artillery. Well, not artillery. Again, I have no idea where the artillery is hitting, so again, I'm rather figuring where's the most likely spot he's going to hit artillery. We can actually pause, and it's not going to be that long, but again, I mean, usually when you hear artillery, you sort of figure where's he most likely to throw the artillery at, and again, you can exploit that as an American, but again, you know, victory points tend to be, if you have troops there, that's going to be where artillery is hitting. High resource points, the likes. So that's sort of a rule of thumb and sort of figuring, well, where's going to be hitting with me with artillery? In this case, it was actually firing, then he actually got my MT-42. Another rifleman squad trained. Again, I think Piwawsky might have benefited from Mega Station. Bunker up. Sturm armory up, and we do see an armored car rolling about. The heavy armored car.
Losing ground out there.
Point secured. Also, I do believe we reached 3,200 subscribers. Of course, a hip hip hooray for that. A big thanks to all of my subscribers. You're all wonderful, handsome, and very intelligent people. Of course, I do hope you continue to enjoy my channel, and of course, tell your friends and all that. Rifleman advancing up there, right into the face of this 242. Only killing one. Another force moving up into the center. Sadly, the MD-42 has not been accrued. Some Volksgunners could try and move in, though they might also get cleared out. And we do see them, but they're too close to the flamethrowers. Anti-tank gun firing as well there, and the MD-42 is quickly sorted out. A tragic situation. Grenadiers and Volksgunners moving up here, perhaps hoping to hit the anti-tank gun. In fact, I am hoping to hit the anti-tank gun from another angle. And again, you always try to remember to maneuver, not just try to hit the enemy from the front, but try to hit them from the flanks. And of course, in this case, it's actually going to force Piwawsky to pull back his anti-tank gun. Grenadiers trying to move in. Instead, they get caught out in the middle of the road, and the flamethrowers just, tear through them. So do the riflemen. Not good at all. Blitzkrieg assault fails. Americans retreat, so that's 50 munitions wasted for me. Mortar rounds continue to wreak havoc over here. And stormtroopers called in to replace the men lost. Called in for the Reichsdefense. Sturzdorf. Which was less a sort of special unit, basically more when the Germans basically took together some of their better men, equipped them with assault weapons and sent them in. They could have been anything really. They could be pioneers, which again are also assault units. These could just be more heavily equipped. It could be grenadiers. It could be, well, veterans of the division, fusiliers, if it was an infantry division, or Aufklärung, if it was a Panzer Grenadier units, reconnaissance units. Again, basically could be a lot of things. And equipping them with the Sturmgewehr, not going fully right away because I don't want to risk, not finding myself with munitions to lob some grenades down my opponent's throats. And Veteran 2 on the way for the infantry, about damn time. More anti-tank guns on the way for Piwawsky, perhaps? No, it's the same one. Piwawsky making progress on the left-hand side. Stuke here and mining up there, just in case he decides to pull up tank destroyers and tanks, and that's actually my primary worry at the moment. That Piwawsky gets a few tank destroyers, in which case I could be in a lot of trouble. Fortunately, he's not going for it. Very fortunately for me. And there we go, the Sturmgewehr equipped for a few of the stormtroopers. Pulling into the center there, Piwawsky with his large infantry force supported by artillery. Can do a lot, but it can also be stopped a bit. And of course, stormtroopers beginning ready to sneak in. Volksgunners in trouble, retreating. Stu-42 getting attacked. And there we go, the stormtroopers reveal themselves, unleashing assault rifle fire. Sticky bombs on the Stu. Artillery going in. Anti-tank gun firing. Piwawsky wants vengeance. He wants the Stu-42 dead. Bundle grenade goes off. Makes a nice splash, but does nothing else. Stormtroopers getting hit by the Stu-42. The last shot actually killing one of the stormtroopers. Bit of an ignominious defeat. Volksgunners up here fighting versus riflemen in a lot of trouble. Going to throw a few blitzkrieg assault grenades to try and sort of clear up a path, but no. Instead, they all die before they actually manage to escape. Tragic. Mortar rounds, though, on the other hand, managed to do the damage, and the riflemen are going to retreat right past the stormtroopers. One poor guy, basically without a weapon in his hand, even. And a BAI, in fact, is dropped by him. And I quickly pull back to secure the BAI to ensure it does not fall into the hands of my hated American foes. I do consider getting a Nebelwerfer, but considering he has a howitzer, I rather fear it's just going to get counter-artilleried. Assaulting up through here, bundle grenade. A few riflemen dead, the rest of the storms retreat, and artillery again towards the medic bunker, towards the ruins of the building behind it. And again, the building here can absorb artillery fire, and that's why I generally always place my bunkers medic bunkers, repair bunkers behind structures, or anything that can absorb some artillery fire in case it happens. Raven here suffering a bit. Piwawsky is bleeding. He's still able to do some damage, but he's lacking something. Again, a medic station might have benefited him a bit in the long run. Or if he'd not bothered with the howitzer, instead gone for some armor. Because again, this sort of nature of Sturzdorf can in fact mean his artillery becomes a lot less effective, since most of it will hit buildings. Stormtroopers reinforcing. And of course the bundle grenade was a rather interesting thing, a World War I sort of idea. Basically one stick grenade and a lot of the warheads from other grenades taped around it. It was apparently even used as an anti-tank grenade in the earlier stage of the war when the armor wasn't so bloody thick. So there's something to consider there again as well. Second assault rifle on the way, a bit of a waste of the BAR I suppose, but on the other hand, I basically took that up to ensure the Americans didn't get it, and well, I'd rather have more assault rifles from my stormtroopers. Rather than sneaking about. Armored car pulling up, Piwawsky moving out in larger fashion. Mortar rounds firing away as usual. In fact, I moved them up right behind the building to protect a bit against artillery fire. And the stormtroopers pretty much prompt a full retreat right there from Piwawsky. In fact, oh, the BAR is still moving about, so I actually paid 75 munitions for one assault rifle. That's not good either, in some ways, I suppose. Flamethrowers burning away, but not all bad either. Tiger, though, called in the Tiger from some heavy, schwere Panzerabteilung. Nice push up there, and more artillery getting called in against the bunker. Stormtroopers moving in from the rear. Lots of automatic weapons. Spun grenade veterans, the 2 engineers, by the way, and grenades unleashed from all sides. Repair bunker, by the way, to help keep my vehicles and armor in tip-top shape. 7 kills in the howitzer. Mortar, not the howitzer. A medic bunker barely there. Total collapse of the center, and I've actually not got a lot of infantry left. I was rather hoping the medic bunker could help a bit with that, but sadly I'm not getting too much out of it. And pardon the hiccups. We are here to destroy them. Yes, you are, Helmut. You are here to destroy them completely. Armored car keeping the right flank secure. I was actually trying to secure an anti-tank gun, but that got cleared out. Though I still keep it like that just in case he does decide to hit me with armored cars, or for example gets an off-map coming group with a few tank destroyers. In which case another one improvised in could be nice. Tiger advancing straight into the line of fire of the anti-tank. Of course now Piwawsky knows it's there, but I actually move up there a bit. And a large push up by Piwawsky through the center armored car, trying to deal with the rifleman crew up there. And a bunt grenade going off. Grenade against the stormtroopers. And absolutely devastating. The Tiger adds in. Engineer squad down. Rifleman squad down. Other squad down to 3 men. I mean, the carnage. Bodies everywhere. That is pretty much, I do believe, 12 men. And never mind adding in all these other riflemen. So 12 dead bodies. Lots of blood. Lots of screaming, crying, and all that. And that was definitely not Piwawsky's fight. And another engineer squad down. I mean, Piwawsky right there just got gutted. Calling in rangers to suddenly try and save the day, lead the way out of the valley of the shadow. And repairing the medic bunker. The storm is ready. I do love the stormtroopers, and I really love their voice actor. He's absolutely great in really getting that German seal across. And game deciding bundle nade. Yes, indeed. The Tiger, of course, also helped, since it's also pretty much knocked out a squad. MG wants more recruit, but again, the Rangers are too close. We're seeing assault rifles. I mean, submachine is already equipped. Tiger, though, gets off a nice hit. MG suppresses. Anti-tank gun fires. Tiger misses. Where are the stormtroopers, actually? And artillery against. Oh, mortar crew dies again. And actually accidentally retreated the stormtroopers. Oh, the indignity. Pack crew getting artilleried. Another Ranger squad summoned in to assist Piwawsky, trying to clear out the anti-tank gun here. But I'd forgotten about the second anti-tank gun, and my armoured car goes down. There's still, of course, the Tiger. It should not be underestimated. Another squad of stormtroopers arriving. Giving me my 3 infantry squads. More assault rifles equipped. And veteran 2 on the way for the armor. Gives the Tiger some bonuses, and also the Stug that actually allows them to survive. Plus, of course, the MG for the Stug. Right here, though, Piwawsky was a bit too bold. Stormtroopers spotting a rifleman squad right here. Rangers moving up the right-hand side. Rangers moving in to help deal with the stormtroopers. The stormtroopers pull back and retreat, in fact. Don't want to lose them. Anti-tank and crews dying. Assault rifles once more. Rangers and riflemen moving up against the stormtroopers versus the assault rifles and grenade in more or less the same spot. And again, heavy casualties for the Americans. I mean, it's pretty much a repeat of the second one. And again, once more, this spot gets drenched in American blood. And there you go, game over. A rather bloody fight in particular right around here. They're going to have, well, they'll be finding parts of Yanks in that place for years to come. Decades even. Really nasty fight. I mean, I was not doing too well in the beginning. Rather some nasty mistakes done by me, but I was able to sort of stabilize it. Piwawsky and he, actually, we chatted about this afterwards, probably agreed. And said, in fact, offered the fact that probably the howitzer was a bad move. He should have gone for a tank depot, and I was really more worried about a tank depot than a howitzer this match over. Because, again, that could really have snuck through a lot of places, hit me from several points, and really been a pain in the arse. Or he could have tried, just going for the left-hand side initially, going for some Rangers early, and perhaps some off-map combat groups. I also think a medic station would have helped Piwawsky sort of, keep the rate of attrition down. Of course, a medic bunker from me earlier might also have helped. The stormtroopers, though, did pretty well. Veterans 2 could have been up faster for me, but at least I did get some veterans up a bit earlier. The stormtroopers, the assault rifles, though, were pretty much some of the best troops this game. The bundle grenades, and again, really here, pretty much, yes, as Piwawsky said, well, decided the game. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed this match. Hope you learned something from it. If you did, why not subscribe and tell your friends? And if you didn't, well, why not send a replay of your own or provide some feedback in the comments? And of course, I mean, what would you have done in the same situation? Would you have done what Piwawsky did? Would you have gone for the tank depot, or would you have gone for something completely entirely, perhaps even a different doctrine? Why don't you throw up your suggestions in the comments? Always good to have some thoughts on that. And of course, feel free to follow me on Facebook or Twitter. Links are in the video description. This is ImperialDane saying cheers.